So as we're entering into the spring season, I want to talk about a plant that can sometimes be confused with the Easter lily, but it's not. While it is a relative, it is distinctly different, and I'm talking about the Madonna Lily. So this is a plant that's actually quite rare. It's not as sought after as other cultivated lily species are out there. This is a plant that originated from the European area, and it can grow up here in Zone 6A. It overwinters. It can overwinter quite well, kind of remaining green for the most part throughout the cold season, throughout the winter, and that sends up a shoot in the spring, and it can go to flower. The Easter lilies are, you can probably buy them at a grocery store or at a florist this time of the year, but they're already in bloom. They've probably been bred or raised to do so. But the Madonna lily, at least in its natural state, won't flower until later on in the summer. So the Madonna lily is, of course, a perennial. Of course, I said before, it can overwinter, and it can overwinter for many years. It can propagate by seed, but it can also propagate by bulb divisions, kind of similar to like how garlic would. Of course, if you're growing them by seed, it can be somewhat tricky, and the plants can take a couple of years or a few years to grow and develop until they start producing flowers. So just keep that in mind if you are planting the seeds. So this plant is not deer resistant. The deer will go by in the spring and such while the plant is sending up its flower stalk, and they will chop that right off. Now, it might be an effective way to encourage the bulb to really grow and produce and propagate itself by that bulb division more energetically or more enthusiastically, since it's not sending all that energy up into its reproductive growth, right, to produce that flower stalk, the flower, and ultimately set seed. Now, I haven't fully tested this theory out yet, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I know last season I did try to cut back a couple of the flower stalks on a few of them, especially on like the smaller plants, to see if that would encourage them to grow larger this year and maybe even start to propagate by bulbs a little bit more. Because of course, if you can propagate them by bulbs, their clones, they will flower that next year. You don't have to wait multiple years for the plants to get established and to mature. Now, I'm not sure if this plant is juglone tolerant, right? If it's tolerant to the chemical that black walnut trees may produce, or hickory trees even to some extent, and other members of that tree family. At a different property I was living at a few years ago, someone had planted this plant, and it was growing in a forest that included some hickory trees, but it wasn't growing like immediately close, like right next to a hickory tree or anything like that. And if it hadn't been for the deer pressure, it would have flowered. But it was always growing very well, very full, lush growth, even in that pretty well shaded environment that forest provided. So now I have some of these plants planted under an ornamental Japanese maple tree. They get pretty much shade for most of the day. They can tolerate some sun too. I like to take advantage of the shade tolerant plants, especially ones that will produce and grow well, so I can save some of the more light needing plants to grow in full sun locations. So this plant is reportedly edible, right? I haven't tried it yet, but maybe I will try to do a video on it soon. Maybe this year, maybe not. I'm really trying to propagate some more of these plants before I, experiment with any type of food quality. But the bulbs are reportedly edible cooked, and that's definitely something that I'm interested in trying. Now, the Madonna lily and lilies in general can have a little bit of a darker side in that they can be fatally toxic to cats, particularly the pollen that the flowers produce. If the cats end up ingesting it, like say if it gets on their fur and they end up ingesting it that way, it can cause some really serious kidney damage and other health issues that can actually prove to be fatal, especially if not treated immediately. So that is one thing that you really want to be cautious about, especially if you have cats. So definitely use your best judgment and take necessary precautions to make sure that this doesn't become a problem. As another note, the Madonna Lily can get to about 1.5 to 4 feet tall, depending on certain conditions. The ones that I grow usually get between 2 to 3 feet tall. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the Madonna Lily. Maybe you can scrounge around and find some Madonna lilies that you're able to buy and incorporate into your landscape, and you can grow to appreciate them in your own way. So thanks so much for checking out this video. I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.